Welcome, everyone, to Inside the Pickle Jar. I have a guest with me today, Mark Steiner, and he is the co founder and CEO of GigSalad, which is the leading online marketplace that has connected over 4 million event planners with entertainers, speakers, and service providers. His path into entrepreneurship actually began in the world of acting, film sets, and talent representation, where he discovered his passion for helping creatives find opportunities to do what they love. Mark was adopted at birth and then later diagnosed with ADHD. Many of us, I know, can relate to that. Mark is full of empathy, intuition, and emotional intelligence, and he leads with compassion, trust, and a belief that business should feel meaningful rather than transactional. In his view, when one person succeeds, everyone should rise with them. Mark is a natural storyteller, and he speaks openly about leadership, vulnerability, creativity, adoption, ADHD, and building a business that prioritizes humanity. His voice carries warmth, honesty, and vision, and he believes that the best ideas are the ones that make life better for others. Welcome, Mark. Are you ready to get started?
I am. Thank you for the introduction, Tanya.
Yes, awesome. I actually would like to start somewhere that might seem a little sideways. Before Gig Salad and before entrepreneurship, you were an actor. What did you love about that?
Oh, it really started with wanting to be famous. Frankly,
Fair.
I think I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to be, there's probably some element of wanting to be rich too, but not really. I mean, the main thing was I wanted to be known. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be admired. And I think a lot of that, these were very early recollections I have. And I think it has to do entirely with being adopted. I think somehow in my head, though I later, learned the real story, but there's this element with adoption that can often be misconstrued or misunderstood that you were given up. And so by being given up, it was because you weren't good enough. You weren't, as a baby. I mean, my gosh, what would it be about a baby that would make someone give them up? This is a young boy telling the story. Was I not cute enough? Really, was I crying too much? I don't know. What made it so? And so, I think I really wanted to somehow do my best in whatever power and control I had to be in a position where I was loved and I wouldn't be given up. And to me, that was TV actors. I used to watch I used to watch TV actors and I admired them so much. I wanted, and I thought, well, if I feel that way about that person and I was doing that thing, maybe people would feel that way about me. And so, not entirely pure, good motivations for a pursuit in a career or life in general, but I worked through it. I kept the dream alive. I moved to New York. I kind of pursued a career in acting, but I wasn't ever working honing. I wasn't consistently honing the craft, working on becoming a great actor. I thought my charm, my good looks, I'd get discovered. I was just going to be plucked out of the crowd and said, "Kid, you're going to be a star just as you are." Just some really naive, gullible, ignorant, immature ways of looking at this, what was in, how to compensate for this insecurity that was inside of me. And
Mm,
and I was still a very hard worker, and I was so motivated. And I've always had this ability to manifest the things I want, in spite of not always going the most traditional route. And I've sort of found my way. And then as I've grown up, and I've done lots of therapy and counseling. I've worked out how to get those original thoughts about myself, I've learned to get them out. Anyway, I just rambled. Sorry, Tanya.
This is wonderful. So there's the version of your story where you stay in that world, acting, talent, representation. What actually pulled you out of it?
Well, so here's how I knew it wasn't really at that time in my life, it wasn't really acting that I was chasing.
Hmm.
Because what happened was I moved to New York very shortly after high school. I toured around the country in a children's theater troupe. When that tour was over, I said I'm going to move to New York and try to get my lucky break in the movie business, and I got it. I got the lucky break on the production side, and immediately I know that I felt there was something fulfilling about being in the movies because it's such an exciting, it's a business that not everybody gets into. I think it's a business that I think people dream about getting into and never actually realize it. And here I was in proximity of the stars that I wanted to be, and just being close to it, having these brushes with greatness, somehow fulfilled me. And I that so the business it's fun, it's interesting, it's always different, it's always new. You're working in with some of the most talented people in the world, and so I kept getting one job to the next until finally I ended up getting a part. And again, this goes back to that manifestation of I just told a director I really wanted to be an actor, and I was doing my job so well that she rewarded me. She said, hey, here's the bone. Here's a line. I'm giving you a line, kid. And that was Susan Seidelman in the movie She Devil. And I will
Oh,
be
wow.
forever grateful to Susan Seidelman, her husband Jonathan, who was the producer on the movie, Mac Brown, who was also a producer and sort of a mentor to me as I was in the business. He would always hire me be a production assistant or craft service job, which is where I ended up. So I stayed in the world for that reason. The reason I got out was we moved. I had gotten married, and we moved to Connecticut. And at that point, I said, I've done this for 10 years. I gave it the best run I have, and I'm going to move on to something else. And I had,
Okay.
and that would, and that at that, I consider running my craft service company my first sort of real entrepreneurial sort of pursuit. Um, and then I went into I had a plush teddy bear that I had a concept for a colorful rainbow colored bear that was to teach kids to love all the colors, and it was a statement against racism and bigotry, and so that was my next thing, and I did that on credit cards, and then found myself needing to get a real job to pay off the credit cards, and that's when I became a booking agent, and off I went. So
Okay. Well, that kind of leads me to my next question then, because Gig Salad connects all of these entertainers and event planners at scale, like over 4 million connections. But at the very beginning, what was the problem you were trying to solve? And did you know it was going to become what it became?
So I went from working. So when I went to get that first job as a booking agent, I worked for a small boutique agency in New York City, and I worked there for 7 years. And then I left that small agency thinking I was sort of burned out from that business, and I went to work for a friend of mine who was an architect in New York City, and I gave that a try. And as much as I loved architect, and as much as I loved Rick and Ellen, who had the agency, it wasn't for me. I was doing something that was sort of outside of my realm, and so I started Steiner Talent. I continued in the booking business, and I had a friend design a website for me, And the moment my website went up, I started getting lit up with phone calls and emails of people that were now starting to search the internet. It was 2003, so fairly early on. I mean, it wasn't obviously there's been there was a company that was doing the gig salad sort of business since 97. My problem to fix was that wasn't my business. I was booking national touring acts, more celebrity headliners,
Mhm.
performing arts center talent, colleges and universities, more names. But what happened was, I think local regional entertainers and performers started to do a search looking for representation, looking for gigs, and Steiner talent was popping up. And having been the starving artist, having come from that world, although this local regional types of talent, booking wedding bands or booking string quartets or booking clowns and magicians and face painters for kids' birthday parties, that wasn't my business model. But those were the people that were reaching out to me. At the same time, I was getting what I refer to as local and regional event planners reaching out to me. Same principle. They're putting in booking agencies, talent agencies, or they're putting in talent or whatever the keywords that they were using. Steiner talent was popping up. And so here I had these two different parties trying to reach each other. And I said to my friend web designer, I said, there's something here. I'm spending a lot of time trying to connect these two parties, and there's really not enough money in it for me. Like, I'm going to book a $150 face painter for an hour. How much am I going to charge to make that worth my money, my while? It wasn't my business model. And so but I'm trying to be helpful. What do you think, Steve? Maybe let's create a website that will be a basic directory. We'll just have a database of entertainers and performers. Hopefully, these brides and mothers of the brides and bridal planners, wedding planners and moms planning kids' birthday parties. These people will find that website. They'll get connected with those people, and off they go. And they can do business, and we'll charge people to be listed on the platform, and then I can get back to my core business, which was Steiner Talent. And we fiddled around and created a beta version of this website, and had a couple different iterations, uh, and that was as early as 2004. And then our official launch was 2007, and we really just started to explode. And finally, in 2011, I and Steve I folded Steiner Talent into the common interest of GigSalad because it was kind of connected. We were still doing so. There was an agency division that was doing bookings for the big acts, and I say big acts, the national touring acts and stuff. And then Steve, he shuttered his Tetra design company, and it was from that point on that I've made my living and my career through Gig Salad and Gig Salad
That,
alone.
that's so awesome. You're also in it for the little people. That's quite an amazing sort of.
Yeah, that that's a really key point, Tanya. That's the joy. It's the mass. It's the volume of people that we've been able to serve. There's plenty of, there's definitely this demand for celebrity talent. And I was a middle broker in that world, but there's the folks who are trying to become stars. There's the folks that just, would love to have just a very simple, make a living doing what they do. The weekend warriors, and that's what Gig Salad answered to. Was these people who were also very talented. They're very talented people, um, uh, and there's lots of opportunities in their neighborhoods, in their towns, and that's what Gig Salad has been able to provide for people is, and lots of them. We have about 115,000 members on Gig Salad now,
Huge.
and as you mentioned, 4 million plus event planners that have accessed and accessed Gig Salad and had connected with talent over the years. So it's been
Yeah.
pretty
And you're
amazing.
an overnight success now, right?
Oh, you're right, right. That's right. I've told people I make it look really easy. I once did. This was 10 years ago. I'm looking for this sheet that I shared with my team. It was even longer ago than that. But I started to just journal all of the things that it took to get here.
Ah,
And the heartache, the long hours, the stress, the pressure, the not Steve and I did not draw any money from Gig Salad for 4 years. Everything we made went back into the business, and we had to maintain our other companies to keep us going. So there was
yeah.
so many things, and yeah, so I love it. Whatever the perception is to people that, oh, it was it's easy, you know, you
I
know,
do. I do. Yes. Yeah, as I work this inside the pickle jar uh, side
right,
business,
right,
it's I do it because I love this,
exactly.
and so yes. So I just re- speaking of inside the pickle jar, I would like to talk a little bit about your ADHD, if you don't mind.
Please.
So you were diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, and I want to ask about the before. What
Mm.
did life feel like before you had that language? What were you telling yourself about yourself?
Oh gosh. Well, I just turned 60 last month. I'm in March 10th, I turned 60 years old. In the fall of 23 is when I was diagnosed.
Mm,
And the only reason I was diagnosed, the only reason I thought to get screened is because my daughter got diagnosed with ADHD. And my adult child, she was in law school. She was really struggling with test taking, and she was trying to find accommodation and in that process. And because they people had thought it was anxiety and some various things, and she was still struggling. And so, sure enough, she gets diagnosed with this thing, ADHD, which I never heard of. Like I might have heard that acronym here and there, but I didn't know what it was, and I didn't care. It was I didn't know. I just didn't know. And so then, but she starts telling me the symptoms, and at that point, I'm like, oh, what? Oh, you're describing me to a T. That's a thing. So I have a thing. And that revelation, that epiphany was a bit overwhelming because I had simply viewed myself my whole life as just inadequate, insecure. There's something, there's something, I didn't, well, I would toggle back and forth from assuming that everybody thought the way I did and that my mind this was the same for everybody, to I'm I'm different and not different in a great way. And then all of a sudden I get, oh, there's a name for it. And so the your question, how did I think about before that? It was just I was a scrappy kid who worked hard and just would figure it out. I'd compensate. I wasn't a good student, but the only reason I wasn't a good student is because I couldn't concentrate or I couldn't focus. I was just so easily distracted. And so I thought, but I thought, but I wasn't. It wasn't that I wasn't smart. I tested well. So my mother, for example, would say, "Mark, you're just not applying yourself. You're not. You can do better than this." There was an expectation that I should be doing better, and I just, I couldn't do homework. I just couldn't. And so I would do. I was a master at masking, and I was a master at shape shifting. And I thought so much of that had to do with me wanting to be an actor. Like I felt like I was always acting. I I was I was always performing. I would I would perform to the best of my ability in whatever the circumstance and setting was. And you do that long enough, and it just is very natural to you, but I didn't even know what I was doing. I just did it. It was survival for me. And so the areas that were difficult, the most difficult in my life that I couldn't name were things like my emotional irregularities. I could, I, the often, depending on how tired I was and how confused I was, things could easily make me cry, make me feel very emotional. My feelings of inadequacy would the way that manifested was often through feeling sad or not knowing how to articulate and just feeling this tremendous amount of emotion that I always wore my heart on my sleeve, and so it made no sense to try to hide it. And I would find myself having these talks or telling people, oversharing what was going on in my head, and all those things just always made me feel so. It made me feel, frankly, very unmanly. I always felt that I wasn't man enough, um, and yet I would often find friend groups and circles of friends that were very macho, tough, golf, the sports guys, the athletes, the cowboys, I always somehow found my way into these groups, and in spite of feeling nothing like them, I somehow got accepted by them, but I never felt that I fit in. So
Yeah,
again,
kind of on the fringe.
very much on the fringe. Very like how am I here? Why am I here? Why am I bothering to be here? Um, I'm posing. I'm pretending to be like these people, and it was just such a catch 22 sort of. And so, yeah, that's what I did. No, there was good stuff too. There was good stuff too. I mean, I could multitask. I could spin plates, and I could juggle lots of balls, and I could get a lot of stuff done. I knew how to hyperfixate, and I knew how to the things that you hear about with ADHD. This is the classic. Founders of companies and CEOs of companies often have this trait. But it doesn't come without a lot of confusion and complexity.
Yeah.
Because I, here I was a CEO. I never even went to college, let alone had to, have an MBA. Like that's what I thought. The classic, I'm not smart like that. I don't know the books. I don't know how to analyze this stuff, but I had emotional intelligence. And that's how I led. I knew about culture, how to create an amazing culture. And
Thanks, everybody, for listening to this first half of my conversation with Mark Steiner. We're going to break off from here, and I will send part two out the next week. We'll leave off with Mark talking about how he creates culture, and we'll pick back up with how he thinks about business and having ADHD and where it goes from there. I hope you enjoyed the first half of my conversation with him and that you'll join me for the second part. It's truly interesting. Thanks so much. And if you like this first half, please like, subscribe, share with others. Until the next episode, take care, my pickle friends. Bye.